Hey moms, welcome to the Gather Moms podcast. My name is Kate.
And I'm Rebecca. We've created this space just for you because we're both moms and we get you.
Yes, we believe there truly ain't no hood like the motherhood, and we need to be in this together. We also believe we can't mom well without Jesus, so you're going to hear us talk about him too.
Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Gather Moms and make sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss a single episode.
All right, mamas, let's jump in. Moms, welcome to episode 77 of the Gather Moms podcast. Can you believe we're at 77? God's number twice.
Double sevens.
We made it.
We've had such a hard time getting to this point. Friends and family listening right now.
Oh, for this moment when we're recording.
So it's kind of interesting. Double sevens has not really played into this experience
you guys,
yet.
Maybe, let's do this. On the back end of this episode, I'm going to drop in just some outtakes from us trying to get set up to record this episode. It just is not going super smooth.
I feel like it's like setting up for perfection, though. You know, It's like chaos into calm.
Fantastic. I love that.
Let's do it.
So we are in our series of help. And we talked about our first episode, we talked about help, how we need help, but we don't ask for it. And we need to ask our community. We need to ask God, right? And then last time we talked about money. And we said,
needs money.
Yes, yes. So we talked all about finances and everything. And we've had lots of great feedback from that. And, you know, I think just people just knowing that like we're all in the same boat together, you know, that the same boat that's fallen apart and we need to repair it.
Listen, have you heard that new worship song, Build a Boat?
Yes.
Y'all got to listen to that. That's a good song.
Let's drop that in the show notes.
We're building a boat.
Yeah.
Come on, we're building the money boat.
Yeah.
This is the money boat.
So one of the things that our moms, when we ask you guys, like, what do you need help with? What comes up over and over is help with obedience, you know?
From your husband?
Well, you know what? We should do a whole episode on husbands obeying. I don't even know.
I don't think that's biblical, is it?
Sure.
Submit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have gone there.
Husbands, love your wife. This is how you wash her in the water of the word. I don't know. So
we're talking about our pets.
Okay, so let me tell you, so one of the things I Googled in preparing for this was common disobedience or something like that, or most usual disobedience behaviors or something like that. And you know what came up? Pets.
Yes.
Dogs.
Yes.
And then I was like, oh gosh.
That's the market right now. People love their pets. Probably more than their kids.
Okay, and they're focusing more on their pets' disobedience than they are on their kids. We're about to get into that. Okay, but so you know, today we're going to talk about disobedience in a different way because we actually just talked about this not that long ago on episode 70. We talked about what was it called?
Episode 70.
Interrupted by no.
Okay, now it's coming back to me.
Remember Mom Interrupted?
Yes.
Okay, we talked about Interrupted by No. And you guys, in that one, we get like really specific about some like actual like real practical ways to practice obedience in your home. Some things you can do, especially with younger children and stuff like that, things that have worked well in my home. And so check out episode 70 for some of those techniques in case you missed that. But today I wanted to approach this conversation differently because I think in that last conversation, I felt like I was able to share from things that have worked for us and was kind of a telling more conversation. And then this one, I really wanted to, because I started realizing, hey, I have some areas to work on here and what we're about to talk about. So this is not so much of a telling. This is a, hey, I'm in this with you. These are things I'm working on too. So if you ever hear in my voice anything other than that, it's not, because I am sitting here saying, I have researched all this. My husband and I now are sitting down looking at, hey, what are we doing well here and what are we not? And so we're all just in this together, kind of working through some of this research, reading these things that I found to see what we think about it, what we need to work on.
So interesting you said that because as I was prepping, I felt the same thing. I thought, oh, I want to work on this. Like, this is something I'd actually like to do better.
Yeah.
Like, I have some time left with these kiddos. I want to get it right. Yeah. So that's so funny you said that because I feel the same thing. Like, I want to learn alongside us on this episode because I want to start doing these things in my home too.
That's right. The truth is, none of us are doing this perfectly. None of us have perfect kids. We're not perfect moms. All that stuff is nonsense. That's not even a thing. So we're all a work in progress, right? Trying to do better. And it changes as our kids change and grow. And we all need to keep learning and keep growing. think we've seen this kind of evolution of this like gentle parenting thing that's been coming out. And so I started researching about that, trying to decide like what do I think about gentle parenting?
Ooh, you about to get a hot button issue? We're gonna have some back and forth.
I don't want to ostracize anyone, and I really don't want to come down that hard on this. Basically, gentle parenting at its core is about connecting with your child and not using like authoritarian type behaviors with them, right? Like spanking, yelling, stuff like that. I think when we hear that, we're like, yes, for sure, we're on board, right?
I mean, I got spanked.
I know, but just the general, like, we're like, okay, sure, don't spank, right? Don't yell. That's great. Okay, fine. But
we're going to have a support group for all the yellers later.
Which, yes.
Shout out to the moms that yell.
Listen, I yell. My mom yelled.
I don't believe it. Okay. I do not believe that you yell. I don't.
Well, I don't believe that you yell. I've never heard you do it.
Oh, yeah, I yell so good. I'm a really good yeller.
But I think where this gentle parenting thing gets awry is when you have this little toddler who you start treating like a tiny adult. And they're not a tiny adult. And so you have all these kids that have, can't regulate themselves emotionally. They're having tantrums. Their world feels out of control because we're asking them to make decisions about their lives that they're not prepared to make.
But they're not at the right stage to make either. Their little bodies aren't emotionally, like their brains aren't there yet.
Yeah. And so, when it gets on the extreme end, we're asking a 2-year-old, do you want to eat this? Or do you want to eat this? Or do you want to eat this? Or, and that's just a lot for them, right? Of having to just come up with something all on their own, regulate do you feel like sleeping? Oh, you don't feel like sleeping? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Some of that kind of stuff where it's just kind of like, it kind of can get to the extreme. But just on the same, I would say non-gentle parenting is another extreme.
Is that the name of the other one?
Well, I think when I think about non-gentle parenting, because to me, gentle parenting is a reaction to maybe 50s style parenting where like kids were seen but not heard. There was no relational component with the parents. There was spanking and rules expected, but no explanation behind them, right?
Yes.
And so to me, those kind of things are like opposite polar ends. And I don't think either of those is very healthy.
So one side is kittens and the other side is...
lions?
Okay. I was thinking.
Did you want to say in the cat kingdom?
I was going with the dog. I was going to pick a dog.
Oh, like a German Shepherd, like a Rottweiler.
Yes. Okay, good. Yeah. Kittens and Rottweilers.
Yes, it is. And that's what
Can that be the name of our episode?
Fantastic. But neither of those are like great polar opposites, right?
Agreed.
So, but as I was studying this and preparing, I do think there's a component where parenting is different today. And we are seeing parents parent differently, and especially than we were parented, right? Things just look different. We have, and then we have parents doing some of these, what I feel like are kind of wild. It feels very granola-y to me when they're like, how do you feel? Or like, they're running out in the street because they're reacting to trauma from the womb. No, they're not. They're running out in the street because they're a sinner,
They remember the womb?
Right. But I'm just saying, there's some of this like granola type mentality out there. But as I was researching, I came across this woman who wrote a book, and I am so curious to talk with you about this and for just our moms to talk about this, because I think there's some good points here and there's some things I'm like, I don't know. So she wrote this book called Good News About Bad Behavior. And she says this, and this is what I think is really interesting. She said that a study by the National Institute of Mental Health revealed that 1 in 2 children will develop a mood or behavioral disorder or a substance addiction before age 18. These are our children this is talking about. Listen to this. This and other research shows that this represents an actual change in children, not just a rise in diagnosis. So it's not like they're just diagnosing more kids with having this issue. They're saying 1 in 2 kids today are being diagnosed with a mental disorder. Let me read what all it said.
A mood disorder?
A mood disorder, a substance addiction, or a behavioral disorder.
And is that because of something that's happening in the environment?
Okay, so this is what she says. So she says, so if you look around and see children misbehaving everywhere, it's not your imagination. Children today are fundamentally different from past generations. They truly have less self-control. Simply put, we face a crisis of self-regulation.
Okay, but that doesn't sound biblical to me, because we're all created, like God's not changing up the way he's creating little humans now.
Sure.
So we all have the need to sin because we're sinners.
For sure. Yes. But I think about, there is this trend. I do think even though there's biblical truths that I think are foundational that are going to not change, they're going to stay true from generation to generation, right? But I think this generation of kids, I would say that truly they are facing some environmental factors that are triggering, and some of the language we're using about mental health, about resilience, or coddling them in a way that everything has to do with trauma. Everything is a reaction to some, neuroses, right? That is creating this lack of resilience and this lack of their ability to self-regulate because they aren't able to face certain pressures where they build up those muscles.
Well, then, wouldn't that then fall back on us as parents that maybe we're choosing to not push them through those
100%,
circumstances?
100%. So she emphasizes in this book, and she has a bunch of research. It was really interesting, but she emphasizes the need for connection, community, and capability.
Well, that sounds biblical.
It is. It's exactly biblical. I think the more I started reading what she was saying, the more I was like, well, this is what the Bible says.
Yes.
Okay, so these are where she says the problems are. She says, first, where, how, and how much kids are allowed to play has changed.
Agreed. 100%.
Right?
Yes. Nobody goes outside. Well, some kids do, but a lot of kids don't.
But like when we were growing up, we would just disappear. I know it wasn't like my parents' generation. My parents always said, we didn't come home till the lamppost came on.
That's right.
Or whatever,
that's right.
So we weren't to that extreme, but we were certainly out in the neighborhood mixing it up, riding our bikes and,
Yes, I agree with that.
And to be honest with you, that's one of the reasons we moved where we moved, because when we drove down the street, we saw tons of kids playing here. And Jeremy and I said, this is what we want for our kiddos, And so they go outside and play all the time. And we knew that that was something that they needed.
Well, and there's so much that happens when a kid has to go outside and play and interact with other kids and come up with their own games and make little army men out of sticks and
they get into fights and they have conflicts and they work it out, And I'm not saying that's all perfect, but it's real world experience that they're up against, It's not watching a television show where like you've got Bluey and he has a conflict and then his dad steps in and then there's a resolution, right? No, they're having to like figure it out on their own. So I thought that one piece was very interesting. Second, she said their access to technology and social media has exploded.
Agreed.
And this is a given. We know this
given,
one.
Yes. Yes, because I did not have any there's no percentage that I had connection to technology like my kids do.
Oh, no.
We had one computer in the house, I think, when I was like at the end of high school.
Mm-hmm.
I did not have a cell phone. Mm-hmm. They're growing up so different.
Vastly different. And so we're seeing, okay, well, this huge rise in the amount of technology they're taking in is surely related to this change that we're seeing. Rebecca, if this is true, that's 1 in 2 kids that are going to struggle with some major mental or emotional disorder because of something that's going on, okay? So she said these 2 things first, and then she said this third one, and I thought this was so interesting. She said that children today are too unemployed. So she doesn't simply mean the occasional summer job for a high school teen. The term is Big Tent, and she uses it to include household jobs that can help even toddlers build confidence and a sense of community. She says they're not asked to do anything to contribute to a neighborhood or family or community, and that really erodes their sense of self-worth, just as it would with an adult being unemployed.
Yes.
Right?
And that's the church.
Okay, dude, and I agree. So that's what I'm saying. I started reading all this, and I have no reason to believe this woman is a Christian, but everything I was reading, I'm like, yes, 100%. The Bible talks about us being the arm or the leg, contributing to the family, And on a very practical sense, when I look around my home, and I know we've talked about this a bunch of times, I still feel bad when I'm like, I need you to empty the dishwasher. Like I'm asking them to like help me instead of getting it in the mindset that like, no, we're a family unit. We're all contributing and like just changing that mindset.
Just the other day, I think maybe my kid had a late practice and I needed him to unload the dishwasher, but I thought, oh, but he practiced late tonight. He's probably tired.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's what we do every day. We practice late every day.
Yes.
Moms, dads, we're all doing it.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't want to infringe on but you just need a minute to like sit in your bed.
Yes.
What are we doing?
I know. And I do think there's a little bit of that. Like, because there are times where I'm like, Jeremy, I'm done. I can't do anything else. And he picks up the slack for me, right? So we are a unit where sometimes somebody does step in for another, right? But I think so what we have gotten in our minds as moms of like our generation is that when we're asking our kids to do, they're like doing us a favor.
Right.
Instead of seeing it as, no, we're all contributing. This is we're a family, we're a unit, we're working together to like do this thing well. We need each other.
Well, and if you only ask them to do it when it's good for them, like, yes, I have time and energy, I'm so excited to help.
Yeah.
Then they don't ever have to push back past that, like, I don't really want to do this, but I love my family, so I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
It's that whole like teaching them that you have to make those decisions in your life where you do it anyway, even if you don't want to.
It helps develop grit. It helps have ownership, And I love the comparison she has here about an adult being unemployed. I know you felt that a little bit, like when you were kind of, at home and stuff. It messes with your self-worth.
You want to go down that emotional path for me now? Let's do it. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, I know that you've been honest about that it messed with you a little bit of like your worth.
And that's crazy to think, because I know sometimes as adults and as believers, we're like, I'm never going to feel that way. I know who I am. But it's amazing how when you don't feel like you're contributing, that it kind of strips away everything and you just feel this sense of worthlessness, even though I knew. But our kids, they need to be able to see how God is using them in the greater story, and not just their little corner of the world.
Yes. So I just think there are these muscles of like resilience, identity, some of these things that are just atrophying in our children because they're not being used, right? They're not having to do conflict resolution. They're not having to power through hard things because we're out there fixing it for them. We're out there making life easy for them. And we're seeing how that is affecting them. And truly, when we do those things, I mean, it's counter-biblical what we're doing.
Right.
Because we actually are seeing this woman prove with all this research things that are biblical, right? Which I just think is just absolutely fascinating. So this is the last line that I wanted to quote this from her because I thought this was so interesting, just coinciding with what we were just saying about all of this being very biblical, because I wonder if you're going to hear Paul Tripp in this, who we talk about in episode 70 about parenting to the heart of our children. She says this: I hope you will respond to unwanted behavior in a child, not with alarm, but with eagerness. Rather than seeing behavior as a problem, my goal for you is to see it as an expected and totally normal part of how modern kids develop. And I think we can just take out the word modern. This is how kids develop.
Yes.
And that's Paul Tripp's whole thing, is he says that we would not see misbehavior as an inconvenience, but as an opportunity.
Yes.
Because they are showing us their heart. They're showing us that they have a need. And we now have an opportunity to step in with them and help them grow.
And instead of being surprised or frustrated that it's infringing on my time,
right,
that I now have to do this for this small child, to look at it as an opportunity, just like you said, that we're getting to raise up the next generation of believers that are going to impact the world.
Yeah.
Like, this is what I signed up for when I said I want to be a parent.
Yes.
It wasn't supposed to be easy. It wasn't supposed to be comfortable. It was supposed to be exciting.
Yeah.
Because we were getting to make a difference.
But so I'm so glad you said that, because I think so often we forget that we're on the same team with our kiddos. A lot of times we can see ourselves as us versus them, right? What are you doing for me? Are you making my life easier? Are you making my life harder, right? It's us versus them. Instead of bringing those kids on the same side of the line with us and saying, no, we are on the same team. And that's something, Jeremy's done a really good job of, he uses terminology like that in our house. We say those kind of things to our kiddos all the time. We say, we're on your team. We are for you. We want you to win. And we use that language when we say, that is why we're doing blah, 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 right? Because we'll explain, we're on the team. We're all in this together. We want you to be successful. We want you to win. And I think that when we discipline from a place of connection and love, we will always get a much better response than when we're disciplining out of irritation and inconvenience.
Well, and what I was reading too is that so much of our parenting is wrapped up in our ego.
Yes.
So it's really, as a parent, it's about me. and it's about what I can produce in my children that either adds to my ego or takes away from my ego.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when I'm making decisions or disciplining, it's because I want I want you to produce this thing.
Yeah.
And you're not doing it, so I'm going to figure out how to make you do it.
Yeah.
But kids don't respond to that.
No, and don't you think that's when we yell? That's
Yes.
when we lose our cool. That's when we say things we don't want to say, or we maybe throw things, I don't know. But it's in those moments when we're operating out of our ego, out of our like kingdom of self, instead of thinking, okay, no, this is for the kingdom of God. We're all on the same team, right? It's just like a completely different mindset. It changes everything when we see things in that light.
Well, and I think too, especially for like our mamas of littles with like toddlers and babies, I was not able to grasp that in that phase of parenting.
Yeah.
You're so tired and you're so like changing. Everything's changing so fast with this addition of a person to your home. And so I think don't beat yourself up if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have that grand vision yet. I really think that's one of those things that kind of comes the longer you're a parent. You start to see this bigger picture. And as your kids get older and you start to see them kind of come into their own, it really broadens your perspective to go, oh, this is what we're working towards.
Yes.
Whereas when they're little, you're just like, I just need you to sleep through the night. I just need you to put your shoes on.
Yes.
But really, it's one of those things that grows with you as a parent.
That is so good, because that's where I really want to go next, because I think it's important too to remember that, as we're talking about discipline, our discipline will change as our kids change and grow. All right, mamas, we are going to end this episode right here and call that part 1 on our discussion on obedience. We ended up having a long conversation about this, and we have a whole new section to talk about that will be part 2 that will come out next week. But as promised, here are just a few of the shenanigans that happened behind the scenes when we were trying to get started. And remember, we've done this now 77 times, yet every time some mic doesn't work, we're coming in hot, something goes crazy. I'm so discombobulated. How's it supposed to be?
One day, we'll take you behind the scenes of what it's really like to record a podcast. And you'll love us even more, because you'll be like, man, those are my people. They don't have it together.
Hot mess express. Moms, join us on our Patreon community starting September 5th as we do a 30-day Pray for Our Children challenge. Just go to patreon.com/gathermoms to get all the info you need.